Hello, and welcome to another MarketMuse content strategy webinar in our content strategy webinar series. Today's discussion is going to be amazing, and we've got just the perfect guest to talk about this topic, how to effectively connect your content to fulfill on the user journey. Before I introduce him, a little bit of housekeeping. Ask us anything in the box. We are on the On24 platform. Bring it on. Anything under the sun. I think combined, we've been doing this as my guess for over 5 years. So any question under the sun, bring it. We'll answer it in line if it's relevant to our discussion, or at the end of the discussion in the Q&A segment. But if we don't get to it, we're also going to be doing an Ask Me Anything session with our guest. So go please sign up for the Content Strategy Collective Slack channel. We'll have a link in the slides so that you can see it, the bit.ly/CSCAMA. Go in there, and the AMA channel, we're going to be rapid firing questions from the group, from my team, from our clients. Everything under the sun is going to be coming in based on everything that Duane. Now we know it's Duane has experienced, and that you might want to know from him. Also, while you're at it, you're going to be getting this replay in the next couple days. We have now almost, I think, 100 content strategy webinar replays from people like Kevin Indig. We just did one that came out on brand SERP with Jason Barnard, which I just love. There is Pam Didner on sales enablement. Andy Crestodina on being Andy Crestodina and writing great content. Really just a huge treasure trove of information. There will be, count my words, there's 10 of them that will connect with your specific use cases, your specific pain points. So go download them. All right. That's my housekeeping, the not fun part. Like I mentioned, today's discussion is going to be about how to effectively connect content to fulfill in the user journey. And today's special guest is the VP of Industry Insights at Yext. And, we've known each other for a really long time. We'll get into some of the details of his background. But Duane Forrester, thank you for joining us today. And please give us a background of how you got to where you are, the different types of things you've worked on, and, something that you're working on right now that's just exciting.
So first off, Jeff, I want to say thank you to you and the MarketMuse team. Yeah, we've known each other a long time, but it's not often that we get together and get to spend some time diving in on behalf of other people, doing the stuff that I know we both enjoy and sharing our knowledge. So that's kind of cool. For those who don't know me, Duane Forrester, VP of Industry Insights over at Yext.com. Prior to this, I helped run Bruce Clay Incorporated for a little while. Bruce is a very old friend of mine. And prior to that, I was running Bing Webmaster Tools for Microsoft Bing. Ran the SEO program at MSN for a while. I've written a couple of books with McGraw-Hill. They're a little old now, so I'm not going to suggest you go buy them. But hey, there you go. Eventually, once a year, I get this tiny little royalty check for $18. So if you want to contribute, that's some coffee for me. So I've been in this industry now almost 24, 25 years, pushing that edge. So I hear Jeff saying, combined experience of 44. And I'm like, I literally want to do a virtual face slap, right? Because I'm like, Jeff, I feel so old now. But with that comes the fact that between Jeff and I, it's not a cliche to say we've seen almost everything. So we should be able to bring a ton of knowledge and experience to any questions you guys are going to pop up, right? I do know whether Cookie Monster prefers dark chocolate chips or milk chocolate chips in his cookies, wide range of topics we can get to here today. So excited to be here, really excited to dive in on today's topics and see where this takes us.
Awesome. So one thing, when we were just catching up a little bit before the show, before we get into kind of the buyer journey and content mapping and all of those things, the one thing I did want to lead the discussion with was, I think something that you have expressed to me and that I talk about quite often is the perception of what makes a site authoritative, right? So what are the things that mean a lot or that someone should strive for to be an authority so that they can have content that's there during the right place in the buyer journey. So we're going to connect it to that, which is the theme of the discussion. But one quote I remember, and I tested the quote on you, was, your authority is established before you get the first link on that page. And there's a lot of nuance in that comment that you had, you had made this comment ages ago. And, from my standpoint, the biggest thing that, folks aren't thinking about is this is, authoritativeness is established at the site section level. This not, not necessarily at the entire site level. It can be on the subdomain, site section. It's to say, and it's at the topic level. So before that, even that first link goes to that page on that topic, the authority is understood. And how do you, what do you like to say to the world who's not thinking critically about that when they're building content plans, when they're deciding what pages to update?
So how family friendly are we on this show? Because, one thought that comes to my mind is get your head out of your ass, but I don't know if we can say that.
That's completely fine. We're good.
Let's be clear. There's a lot of nuance within that, right? So it's never that simple, and we should never be that polite about these kinds of things. So I won't tell people to get their head out of their ass, even if they're in a situation where they need to get their head out of their ass, because the fact of the matter is it takes a lot more than just that moment. So here's the way I look at it. Let's say I'm going to dive into something that I know, and we'll use this as an example. So some people understand this, some people don't know this. My hobby is building guitars. So I have a workshop set up here at my home. I partner with a larger manufacturer, literally 5 minutes from my house here in Southern California, and I have access to their shop. The amount of information that I don't know about guitars and guitar building would literally fill its own intranet. But comparatively speaking, to a lot of people, and I'll just pick on SEOs, for example. I don't know any other SEOs that are actually building guitars. And so comparatively speaking, I would be an authority on building guitars because I can talk to you about the scale length. I can talk to you about the shape of the neck. I can talk to you about wood densities and moisture components. I can talk to you about programming the CNC and about trademark infringement on shapes for different parts of a guitar body. I can talk to you about how to wind a pickup to get a sound or a tone that you want, because these are all things that I've learned. And relative to a lot of people, that would make me appear authoritative on the topic. Now, if we just took that and said, hey, Duane's a website and he has all of that knowledge, let's put him on the internet, what you would find is Duane would rank somewhere like on page 8, right? Because there are a lot more authoritative people on this topic than Duane, and they deserve to own page 1. But relatively speaking, when you look at the millions of results related to this, being in the top 80 is doing pretty good. And so as humans, we tend to just parse this whole idea of authority immediately. All right. So you meet somebody new for the first time and they're asking questions, they're listening, they're repeating back to illustrate understanding what you have told them. They're adding information that you didn't know, that you find useful, that is done in a manner that is educational. All of that helps you feel like you met someone who is an authority on a topic. And that's kind of what we were talking about all those years ago, right? Where it's like at that time, and let's rewind the clock here, we're talking almost a decade ago at this point, and we were deep in the throes of link building. It was the number one thing, let's not tell the engine we're building links, but let's go do this. And the reality was there's a bigger picture. And that's really where we're at today. All of the technology investments Google has made, everything that Bing has built. And when you think of Bing, I want you to understand something. You have to think big picture about everything. It's easy to think of Google as an entity under Google that is all a part of the name Google, and it manifests as search. What you also have to understand is all of the data that Google possesses from YouTube, from all of its machine learning subsidiaries, all of its spin-off businesses that can feed data back into machine learning to help search get better. RankBrain didn't start because somebody woke up one morning and said, hey, look, there's an AI. Let's turn it on and see if it makes better personalized results in the final mile. No, RankBrain started because someone said 5 to 8 years ago, we need to start training machines. We need data sets. And they started collecting all of that data and running it through the system and teaching it. Every time you see this video, this object is a cat and this object is a vacuum cleaner. And together they are a cat on a vacuum cleaner in a video. And these sentiments that we understand in these comments are funny and humorous and positive. And oh, someone's crying, they're upset, they think that's abusive. All of those data points went into training the system so that we enjoy these smart experiences today. And when you think of it from that perspective as an SEO, how close is fighting about where your H1 tag lives or how many characters are in it to this world of machine learning? It's not close at all, which is why we look at things today. I'm going to drop a bunch of stuff here, Jeff, and we can cherry pick and come back to it and do whatever we want with it. But
I'm tracking.
Look, dude, core web vitals. If people aren't focused on it, I'm sorry, we're about to witness an extinction event here in website terms. And it's not going to be that black and white. I say that it's a little bit of a light the fire under your butt if you're not focused on it, but you need to focus on it. And there's a reason why. Yeah, there's a lot of technical stuff, okay? Core Web Vitals represents Google's attempt to quantify user experience in some way. That feeling you get when you know you had a good experience. I had a box land on my doorstep yesterday. It is a box that I fervently watch for, okay? This box shows up without fail once a month, and it possesses some of the most core, at my atomic level, important elements required for daily living. It is a box of subscription coffee. So when this thing lands on my doorstep, I'm watching for it, okay? It comes from a rescue group just up the coast here in California. So they rescue dogs. We support them by donating money, buying the coffee, subscribing. They send us great coffee. My wife and I prefer decaf, so we get it. We open up the box. I come down from my meeting, and my wife says, crap, I think they sent us regular coffee. And my first thought was, you know what? That's okay. We'll just cancel the subscription. We've done our part. We'll move on. It happens. My wife sent them a note and said, hey, there may have been a mistake here. I think we got regular instead of decaf. I had put it out of my head. I was done with it, right? Because I have innumerable other coffee solutions that I can pivot to. And I'm already thinking about the pivot, all right? So this is your consumer, and this is their insight into their mind and how they're thinking about you in this moment. I'm on the journey for excellent coffee every morning. I have requirements for my coffee. It's got to be good, got to be whole bean, prefer fair trade, like things that support other areas of life that I support, want it to be decaf, so on. During all of this machination in my brain, the lady from the group contacts my wife and says, oh no, I did send you regular coffee. I am so sorry. That is my mistake. I wasn't paying attention. Give that coffee to a friend. I'm sending out your decaf immediately, and we're going to rush it to you. In that instance, when my wife read that email, and that email took 3 minutes for them to get back to us, 3 minutes of response time. In that moment, it cemented my lifetime of loyalty to these people, because that is exactly the type of experience I want in my life. And that's the type of experience that Google wants every one of its searchers to have with every business that it ranks highly. And if you're not ranking highly, taking us right back around to this whole concept of authority, all right? Look, you can go through and run all the reports. You can run all of the link reports. You can do every bit of analysis on content and comparison and semantics and reading comprehension levels. You can do all of that. And you can build yourself a matrix and say, here's how I score against all my competitors. But ultimately, if you're failing to connect with the consumer through good customer service, and that extends across your entire website. We're talking about usability. We're talking about the overall UX. We're talking about navigation. We're talking about colors, button placement, all of this stuff. But if you're failing to make that connection and a competitor is doing it a little bit better, Google's going to rank them above you, and that's it. And it won't matter how much you root around in the SEO cellar looking for the technical tidbits that will somehow trip them. You won't tip it. You will build a better experience, no question about it. And you will improve your website if you chase those things and you actually do the work on them. Absolutely. Will it change your fortune in that moment? No, you won't be seen as more authoritative. That's the bottom line.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to do my best to do, like, I think it's 5 unpacks from that, which, I mean, that is a great story because it covers the fact that quantifying something that was in the air out there for a long time does have value, but let's not overstate what that value is. And so, one of the things we do is we look to quantify quality and authoritativeness, right? Topical authority for your site, personalizing your difficulty. So you can say, how hard is it for me to do this? And quantifying comprehensiveness of a page. Because something you said that's really, really resonates for me is, like, the difference between a 2-coil and a 3-coil humbucker, right? Like, the difference between what wood density would be needed to put that particular pickup on something that's going to sound good versus something that's going to sound like a tin can and garbage. And you better have, a really amazing modifier on it.
Which, it's going to look incidentally, Jeff, if you're really into the blues deeply, that whole tin can sound is like what you want. So,
maybe, let's not talk about it yet. So, but what I'm saying is the Duane example of if Duane was a website about that, that's a really great website, a treasure trove of knowledge that can be sucked out of his brain, right? If you are not coming at it from that angle, you're writing light fare by somebody who is not an expert. And 100%. Light fare only someone needs other stuff to prop it up. And guess what? Over time, that other stuff that props it up loses its ability to prop it up, and you get caught. You get caught in a situation where you're like, oh, all this other stuff I was doing to tell me that I'm the authority, now it's not worth as much. And now I'm living on my inventory of content. And my inventory of content doesn't know what wood density matters. It doesn't know whether you can have an acrylic guitar and still sound good. Right? It doesn't know, what a 12-string versus a 6-string is, even basic stuff, right? And by the way, I know this much compared to what you know about guitars, but I'm just using an example of the things that Duane as a site knows versus this site I figured out that I should write by using Google AdWords Keyword Planner and reverse descending sorting the keyword list. All right, because that site isn't the Duane site, and over time it's going to catch up with you. But the other piece of it that I wanted to mention, and I would love your sentiment on this, is something you call out. I call it champion development content. Champion development content can come in the form of email, but how does that connect to the buyer journey for you? So awareness, consideration, purchase, post-purchase troubleshooting, a champion or renewal, or a champion enablement. Should I be thinking about, if I'm a content strategist, very many people are just looking at, what is comparison, pricing, right? They care, consider, choose if you're at IBM, right? Super basic, right? But isn't the buyer journey far more complex, and you have to research the real experience? Because for me, buying coffee, if it's strong and if it's Italian, I'm happy. We have a very different buyer journey. So don't you have to know the difference between a Jeff and a Duane for coffee if you're going to sell coffee? And how many sites really follow through and make that happen?
So, this is, I think, a really critical point here, Jeff, right? And look, I'm not going to tell. So I want to classify the buyer journey, right? I think we understand what the buyer journey is. It's generally the business defining when I touch the buyer and I get them in my funnel and I make the conversion. That's what a business thinks of as, quote, the buyer journey. And unfortunately, the reason I know that is because that's what websites actualize on, as if that is the buyer journey. Okay, so it's not what you tell me, it's what you actualize on. So sitting in your boardroom telling me you understand the broader implication of a buyer journey is very different than enabling a website that has a one pass-through funnel that doesn't give me all the data along the way. That tells me that your interpretation of the buyer journey is much narrower than it should be. So I propose that alongside the buyer journey, we also have what's known as the brand engagement journey. Okay. Now, that is actually prior to the customer deciding that they want your product. When they decide they want a product and you happen to be in that sphere, they are brand aware of you. So, and they may not be brand aware of you, and that's okay, but they are probably peripherally aware, like they know generally who the players are when they go to search for a refrigerator. Like, you can name a couple of brands. You might not buy that brand. That brand may not exist anymore, but you could say a name, Maytag, GE, like you'd come up with something. And so from that point forward, it is that brand's opportunity to win or lose that customer. Now, look, at one point in my career, way early on, I worked for Caesars Palace Casinos. And all casinos have a program of rewarding players, right? And everybody understands this, okay? You put money in, you're a member of the program, you get money back, basically, as a reward on a card. You could use it for free parking, free meals, free hotel rooms, and it's just, you know, a calculation that's based on what they call your life-to-date theoretical. What is Jeff worth to Caesars Palace over the lifetime of Jeff at Caesars Palace? And they know generally that the lifetime arc of a player is 4 years. And they know generally that Jeff shows up and plays $200 every day, every window of 24 hours within which Jeff enters the casino. He's good for $200. So they can make that calculation and determine that Jeff, yes, is in fact worth that free meal at the restaurant. No question about it, because they know they're more than going to make their money on it, okay? Businesses need to take this long-term theoretical value understanding of their customer and bring it into their marketing planning. Because now what happens is you understand the value of your branding, of your PR, you understand the value of this head content, which attracts the attention of the person who's now shopping for a refrigerator, and you're plugging in through keyword research and trend analysis. And we're going to touch here on your internal site search and the nuggets of gold that can be pulled out of that. But let's just put that in with the keyword lump for the moment. You're going to pull all that data forward, and that's going to tell you your starting point for content. It's going to tell you the hot topics for today's refrigerators. Pull out drawers instead of doors. They're looking for double-sided. They're looking for configurable. They're looking for energy efficiency. They're looking for thinner walls, so more space inside for smaller footprint outside. They're looking for the elusive, fills the big hole in my wall, but doesn't cost me 10 grand, costs me 2 grand refrigerators. So you will come across all of that through that research around keyword and trends and topic analysis. So then you produce your content on it, you put your content out there. But the consumer's journey is only just beginning, because now you've managed to say to them, hey, I have what I think you're looking for. A portion of those people, they're interested in exactly what you're telling them. They dive in, they go through the specifications, they do their measurements. And boy, you better be sharing measurements of the actual product, not the shipping box measurements that you were given from the manufacturer, Samsung, in Korea. Because they'll give you the shipping dimensions, because that's what matters most to them. But what matters most to me, the end buyer, is whether it fits the hole in my kitchen cabinets. So that's a different measurement, right? So now you're into a finite and different amount of content that requires different curation and probably yearly, if not more, updating to stay accurate, right? So now you're a little more invested in that. Your human people or your human collateral are more invested in it. That's more time. That might mean another head count to manage that across all of your lines with attendant benefits packages that have to be applied to that head count. All of this is a very real concern for the business, and you still haven't gotten to the conversion yet. But let's just assume now those people have converted. They bought your refrigerator. Awesome. So fridge shows up. Dude from Home Depot, Lowe's, wherever, they install the refrigerator, they take away the old one, you're standing there, your family thinks you're a hero, huzzah, look at that, ice cubes, cold water, this is epic. And at that moment, it's very tempting to think as a business, well, we're well after the buyer journey because they bought, okay? The word buyer, you need to think of it as a noun as well as a verb, okay? Because they will always be your buyer. They will always be your buddy that you have to take care of since they engaged in this relationship with you. buying your product, because now it's been 4 months and the little red light is on the front of the refrigerator telling them they need to replace the filter for the water tap. And they have no idea what that means, how to do it, where to find it, whatever. They don't remember where they put the owner's manual because, let's face it, it's the refrigerator. And most of us grew up in a time when the manual was either online or you didn't need a manual because the manual would have had one page that said pull handle, open door. And that was the totality of what was required from your fridge. Today, however, it's very much more involved. So where are they going? Right back to you to ask for that legacy information to help them. And dude, let me tell you, I have a fridge, it's 10 years old. And you know what? I still need water filters for that fridge. I still have to look it up. I still have to buy it. And I still need the support for it. And if anybody abandons me on it, the net effect is I can no longer use my water on my refrigerator. Or I have to replace an entire fridge that works just fine except for the water filter because there's no support for me. And you know what that makes me realize as I'm standing there looking at the logo printed on my door? That makes me realize that your company doesn't have my back. So that buyer journey is truly a brand engagement journey that takes place over a long period of time, way before you get them to the front of your funnel and way after they've converted. And look, before they get to that funnel, till after they make the purchase, that's going to be reflected in their first review. Failing them after that on the legacy side of ownership will be reflected in their second review. And it's always going to be negative if you haven't taken care of them. And that then touches right back on authority, because a part of that entire authority equation is, are you going to be there for me? Are you reliable? And look, good. Every search engine is watching for this. It's very clear. No one wants to recommend a flake to a friend. That's just not good. So huge circle there. Huge circle.
You've got it. I mean, that gives me the chills because I'm going to watch this review, that kind of segment, because it does cover it. It does cover it. And I've got a great question, which we're going to get to in a second in the notes here for somebody who just came in. But one thing I think we ought to write an article, you and me, about how every marketer should have to measure their own ADT. I mean, average daily theoretical. I mean, because you don't think typically that way. You know, that is, in that world, that's how they measure that. It's not how much you lose. It's the average daily theoretical loss in 95% of rewards programs, and that's the key, right? That's the key to this. I need to know, the person that's reading this article, the person that's having this experience with me, what's their average N time period theoretical, and that world's my oyster. If I can get everybody to buy off on that, the question I have for you, though, the follow-up is, how do I what if my organization, and this is so real in so many orgs, clients, people that I don't work with, it's those content groups are managed by different teams.
Yeah.
One's post-sale documentation. One's the forum, right? The e-commerce team doesn't believe the forum's worth all that much. The support site, the KB, the knowledge base. Then I've got my top end, and the lead team is arguing with the team that wrote the "What Is" article. And by the way, this will all tie to my next question, which is about linking and internal search. But how do you get those teams to be on the same team? Because we can all write about the same topic, and all those things combine to give one power nugget. Okay, but they're not all thinking critically, then understanding that we're all building this sphere of power, and we will all write articles about this topic, and they all need to work together, or else we are at risk.
Well, there's a couple of approaches here, Jeff, and let me be clear, right? This is not easy to solve. We are not necessarily at a point in business history where people, they get this as individuals. Okay. I'm gonna look, if people have not watched the original Independence Day movie, I'm gonna suggest you go watch it. It's great, popcorn and candy floss for your head, basically. But there's a line in there that Tommy Lee Jones delivers that I find more and more useful in life. Okay.
Mhm.
People are smart, or I'm sorry, a person is smart. People are dumb and panicky. And it generally applies in situations like this, because you can go in and have a conversation with the content lead on post-sales follow-up, and they will understand exactly what you're saying, but they won't necessarily feel like it's theirs to solve because they have their own metrics. So they're working toward those metrics, right? Part of this problem is the siloing we've done over the last 15 years in our industry. And it started with taking paid away from organic and saying two different groups. One's trackable, one's squishy but valuable. And then it just kept going. And now we have people who have dedicated career paths within very narrow slices of the world of search. Still useful because there's a competency there that legitimately is a full-time job for someone. But they have to understand that they serve a larger purpose. Okay, so one way to approach this is the coffee and donuts approach, right? Where you call a meeting with all of the players that you believe are invested, and that meeting is a recurring meeting. And over time, you ply them with coffee and donuts, and you get them to come around and see your perspective. Okay, it's relationship building 101 in its purest form. This is the reason why inside Yext, we follow and we use the Myers-Briggs testing, okay? Everybody goes through Myers-Briggs. And the reason is very fundamental. I did a version of this at Microsoft. It was called Insights Training, and there was also Myers-Briggs. And it was incredibly important because when someone showed up at my door, they would see colored bricks on the corner of my desk. Now, those colored bricks look like foam Legos, and to anybody else outside the company, they would have no clue why I and every other employee had them. All right. And there's a very clear reason why. Mine were always green, yellow, blue, red in that order. Okay. So when people showed up, they knew to approach me by saying, Duane, we can help a lot of people solve a big problem if we do blah, blah, blah. I will drop everything I'm doing and clear my calendar and align immediately with you if that's your approach to me. But if you come to me and say, here's the data I need, and I need it by 2 o'clock, you know, you're going to get the metaphorical, physical, theoretical, and emotional thumbs up from me, all in rapid fire, and I'm not buying on. And when it comes time to review time, I'm going to be sure to talk to your boss about, quote, how you got things done, and tell them it wasn't appreciated. So there's all of those dynamics, right? So, you know, it again is all relationship building. But there's another way to deal with this, and I liken it to what I just described as the organic way of relationship building. Now let's look at the paid way of relationship building inside an organization. You take a walk up several steps in your organization, and you go and you have a meeting with the CMO or their direct reports, and you say, what are your goals for the year? What are you metriced on? What are we metriced on? Here is my proposal and how it impacts those metrics in this manner. Now you have their attention. We have a goal, 25% more sales from this division, and you have a plan. And that plan was presented in 4 simple program parts, and it makes sense. What do you need to make this happen? What I need is your directive that these 5 teams are involved in one program led by this group to manage the entire content flow to the benefit of everyone. And I'm going to need 1 headcount to manage that. Jeff, I love your idea. Run with it. You get no headcount. Jeff, you went into that meeting knowing you weren't going to get the headcount, but you needed to throw something on the table that could be gotten rid of so that the program would move. And now you have that directive from the top down. And you show up and you're basically saying, hey, everybody, I brought some coffee and donuts. I know some of us don't want to be in this meeting. Shrug your shoulders, but let's make the best of it, right? Honey crullers for everybody. Now let's dig in. And you don't need to admit to your role in making it happen, right? So
exactly.
There's,
but I think everybody's got to grab that.
But the fact is, the siloing that we've done, right? And we've become very comfortable with it. This whole attitude of, I've done mine, throw it over the wall. I've done mine, throw it over the wall. That is kneecapping businesses left, right, and center. Because as Google moves toward quantifying the user experience through things like Core Web Vitals,
Right.
When they do that, they put a number on the satisfaction of a customer. You're in no way aligned with that. It's total happenstance that you happen to get good reviews, or maybe you're buying them through a program that solicits them, which, you know, I'm not going to say you should or shouldn't do, but Jeff, you talked about all these props earlier on thin content that don't really stand the test of time. And look, I got to be clear with you on this. Right now, there's an AI system. It's a machine learning system called GTP3. I'm going to get super geeky here for a second, okay? Mm-hmm. What it does is it writes content. And right now, it's writing the equivalent of, wait for it, 4.5 billion words of content a month, okay? Now, I'd love to meet a content team who thinks they can keep up. So here's what's going to happen in rapid fashion. As those systems get smarter, and by the way, these are the systems that Google has been buying companies over the last 5 years in to invest in this direction. The reason Bing is so important is because it's a data feed to Azure, their machine learning platform, that then feeds back solutions to businesses. So eventually what happens is you've got you and your, I don't know how to disassembled, your deconstructed team of 5 groups all producing their own content. And you don't even realize that you're in a battle with a machine learning system that can outproduce you in 3 seconds a day of its time. It can outproduce you at a level of 10 to 1 with content that is 80 to 85% as accurate and good as what your humans produce. And you've also got a machine learning system at Google and at Bing that's watching all of this. And you know what it's saying? Just like it always has. It's saying there are no favorites. I'm not picking you because you're located in Canada or I like your domain name. No, it's picking what it believes is the most authoritative, accurate, and relevant answer. And if that's coming from a machine that doesn't make typos and errors, that produces content on demand when a consumer asks for it, then that's going to be the most relevant and authoritative answer. And so then that content team has no hope of keeping up with this. The way you get past that is align everybody, pull them together, and have humans focused on humans, because machines aren't that good. And humans can really tease out what excites another human, what engages another human, much easier and to a greater degree of accuracy than our machine learning systems can today. So it requires a fundamental shift, right? There's no question. It is all hands on deck. It is, there are no shortcuts. It is, you have to cover all these areas. It's way more complex today than it was 10 years ago. Absolutely no question, right? Look, I'm going to tell you right now, Jeff, you start a website, you do all of the old school SEO, even the new school SEO on it, okay? I'm going to start a website, and all I'm going to do is reputation management on that website. We'll see who outranks who. And I'm absolutely confident it's going to be me right up front, because it's all about the experience the consumer is going to have.
Yeah, and I mean, you've said a number of things, and by the way, we'll get into GPT-3 and generation, even though we hadn't planned to, because you did, and you know, we have the leading competitive product for GPT-3, MarketMuse First Draft. Little plug there.
Exactly.
And we built it all ourselves, and I like to say AI over API, because a lot of people are just using APIs to access a prompt at GPT-3. Guess what? That's not going to be around forever, folks. But anyway, it's
going to become very expensive.
It's going to be very, very expensive. Get ready for it. But I did want to ask one question on this is going back to something that you mentioned on linking, right? So when we go back into it and we talk about this, we talked about authority. We'll get into it. We have some great questions, and thank you. I'm teasing this a little, but we'll get through a rapid fire on some of these amazing questions. But when you're building content and you're not getting the person to that next place of the journey, right? You're not pointing to something that you've also created that focuses them. Isn't that the same as your community management team not being allowed to link to your product pages, or your product pages not being allowed to link to the forum or the knowledge base, or your demand gen team fighting with your content marketing team over what's generating leads and what's not? If I'm not weaving together the content that I create, Do you draw a parallel between kind of that team dysfunction of being a bunch of T-shaped marketers and not a lot of squares to people that just don't link right?
So, okay. So, look, we could go on a whole other conversation about T-shaped marketers and career growth and all that. We'll do another webinar on that at some point, because I speak about that at conferences, right? And there's a lot of value to it. I believe every marketer needs to be T-shaped in some way. It's the only way you move your career forward. But you don't get there by a simple expedient of being an expert in one area. You legitimately have to cover the areas. So based on everything you just said, I'm going to sum it up with a single answer. Okay. If I polled our audience and said, is that the world you're in? And anyone in that audience raised their hand and said, I'm in that world, I'm going to give you #fail. Like, it's that clear. Okay. So if you are truly looking at the bigger picture, the long term of something, your lead gen, your demand gen team should be on the forefront of telling you what's working on like an instantaneous layer. Okay. So let's use the example here of I'm driving in my Jeep and I turn on my fuel economy screen on my dashboard, and it will tell me over time what my average fuel economy is, and that's great. Over a 500-mile journey, it will tell me that, hey, Duane, you got 18 miles to the gallon. Good for you. Right? Remember, everybody, I drive a Jeep, so that's like a big deal. But when I'm looking at the instant read in any one moment might be telling me I'm doing 38 miles to the gallon because I'm slightly downhill, I'm off the gas pedal, so of course I'm burning less fuel. That's what your demand gen group is. They are the instant read of what is happening, what is resonating in this moment, okay? That data then can help feed what your content is. Now, you may not be able to keep up with the switches that are happening in how fast demand gen is A/B testing and moving to something else, and then A/B testing another one, sticking with this one, and then A/B testing, and then, oh, that one's dead now, and let's move to this one. And that's fine, all right? Because when it comes to the content generation side for the actual landing page outside of a demand gen scenario, you want something slightly more evergreen, all right? You want it to become at least a waist or shoulder high tree in the forest, right? Like, that's your goal with this. It's not a seed, and as soon as you see it, you chop it up and you move it along. Like, no. You're going to nurture that a little bit. And really what that is going to come down to is trend analysis. So out of all of the information that you're bringing in, whether it's through the keyword research or my personal favorite these days, your site search box, which gives you a litany of clues, and we'll need to dive into that next, right? But it doesn't matter where it's coming from. Let's take your demand gen. So your demand gen's giving you this kind of fire hose of what's hot right now, right? And you're taking that information in and you're looking at your data and you're saying, oh, okay, well, that's interesting, right? Because demand gen's telling me that 70% of our pipeline is being generated across these 3 areas that we're targeting, and that the content or the actual phrases that we have that match up with those areas, the trend analysis from Google Trends or from Google Keyword Planner doesn't look like it's that big of a deal. And yet, when we actually look at our conversion data, it's a home run. Okay. Oh, yeah. So it's a different way of thinking about it. And again, not siloed, and it's not throw it over the fence. And people need to get beyond that. If you're still living in that world, you need to have frank conversations with your management team, with your strategic leadership team, with your all up C-suite about how you organize and how you manage all of your footprint. Because as a consumer, dude, I don't know anything about how your business is organized or run. I don't know anything about it. And I don't have to. I don't want to. I just want the sausage. I don't need to meet the pig. It's very straightforward, right? Breakfast time on Sunday, sausage.
Very few people want to meet the pig. That's for sure.
No,
I mean,
exactly.
that gets into the questions of, and we mentioned this, the 2 big topics I wanted to kind of cover before we dive into a few of the questions are, one thing you mentioned is intent mismatch, where somebody actually lands on your site because you ranked for something and then you don't deliver. You don't deliver because you gained authority. You gained authority artificially.
Danger.
You gained authority,
and
then you land there and you don't deliver. And the other is, how does internal search, I like to think of internal search pathways as, I don't want to look right? These are people
Right.
are it's an unidentified need. I have structural problems, or I have an over assertive knowledge based structure. So how do you think about intent mismatch, first of all, and then second, how do you think about internal links? Internal search and the treasure trove of information that gives you about frankly your dysfunction.
Okay, so all right. So the intent mismatch part. This is really straightforward, right? I'm telling you, and frankly, look, folks can disagree with me. They can argue with me. I don't really care. Look, you're not going to change my mind on it. I know this because I know this. Bounce matters, right? So if you have an intent mismatch, I end up ranking on Google. You click on my page, you come to my page. I immediately, as a consumer, know, oh, this isn't what I want. And I bounce back to Google. Now, there's a lot happening in that. So let's unpack a few key points. First and foremost, I've somehow managed to convince Google that I am authoritative enough and expertise enough to rank well, right? I've convinced the consumer, because I rank well, that I must be the answer. So the consumer clicks and they hit, and we've all had this. Click on the page, go to the page and go, not what I wanted, go back. And it might not be that your content is bad. It might be that the format of your content is not what somebody was looking for. Maybe they wanted a short video, less than 2 minutes, because they're trying to learn how to tie a tie. So they don't need the entomological history on the word tie and how it all started in the Victorian era. And this is what's considered good etiquette and blah, blah, blah. That may all be true and valuable to a point. But when my goal is to learn how to tie the tie, I just want, look in the mirror and do what I'm seeing. YouTube is my mirror. Let me do what I'm seeing. Look, my tie is tied. I'm a genius. Walking out to go to my event, because my day is not about my tie. My day is about the event. The tie is just what I have to wear to go to the event. So when you have this intent mismatch, the consumer hits the page and goes, not for me, and bounces back. The amount of time that the consumer spent on your webpage is a measurable moment for a search engine. Click on the link at Google, stopwatch starts, go to the web page. Don't consume all the content. Google knows how long it takes to consume the content that's on a page. It's a video, it knows discreetly exactly how much time would be taken by the play length of the video. If not, it knows the average reading speed and comprehension level of a person for that piece of content. And if it would normally take someone 7 minutes to read your page and they were there half a second, pretty safe to assume they didn't read your content. Then the person flips back to Google. Stopwatch stops. Google looks at that and says, take that data, put it over here. Maybe it helps us understand satisfaction. It goes through, it does its calculations, whatever else. But all that's secondary, because now the consumer has left you, gone back, and you know what they're not doing? They're not clicking you again. They're going to go to another result. And that other result may be the same failure to the consumer, but the consumer's perspective has changed. Well, if the mountain won't come to me, I will go to the mountain. And on the second try, they realize, crap, there's no video. I have to read this. And they stay engaged with that content, even though they're not satisfied. But it looks by the measurement, because there's no bounce, like it was more satisfactory. Fast forward a week, tie comes in. Someone's looking to learn to tie a tie. Guess what? You don't rank number one anymore. The other guy ranks number one. This is what we see happening every day, every minute in search results, over and over in real time, machine to machine, figuring it out. Okay, so that's the intent mismatch part. And you don't want to queue that up, right? Like the more of those you have, the less you look like a good answer to Google. So obviously they will try something else in that spot. You truly want to make sure you're nailing that, which then requires you talking to the video team to make short form content that the writers produced from your evergreen group, so that you have that as a version of the content. Or heaven forbid, somebody doesn't like bullet points on a page and fights for it. I will lay down my life till we not have bullet points on this web page. Well, you know what? That's too bad. We better get a defibrillator in here, because you're going to have a heart attack. We're putting bullets on the page because that's what the consumer responds to and stays engaged with. So bullet points it is, moving on. And you can't love anything of your own. You have to look at everything and say, it's all suspect, it's all tradable, it's all upgradable. And part of how you're going to do that, and I'm going to segue us right into your site search here, part of how you do that is gaining more insight into what the consumer is looking for. Now,
Mhm.
When a consumer wakes up in the morning, they go to Google and they start typing stuff in. The last 3 generations of humanity have been taught, throw a few keywords in, and I will bring you back an answer that I think is pretty good. And Google was pretty good at that. Like, we can't take that away, right? General search was pretty good at that. In 2012, Google introduced the knowledge graph, essentially said machine learning is going to take over managing entities, attributes, and relationships, and building that map so that we have a better understanding of what's relevant on your journey when you exhibit this intent, fill in the blank. So when I'm looking for a refrigerator and I say it needs to have a water tap built in, it's reasonable to assume that at some point I will need filters for that. So the intent path includes that product of a filter, and it includes the instructions on how I will put it in. It includes information on reliability. Does it tend to leak over time? What are the common failure points? What does it cost to repair it? Is it something I can do myself? All of that becomes a part of that organic conversation. And a lot of this is going to happen now on your website because Google has taught everyone, go to a search box, throw your shit in there. That's it. It's straightforward. It's simple. And newsflash, humans are lazy, so want to take the easy path here. Now, we also have to factor in here generations, right? We have an older generation of people on smartphones. They don't want to type on the tiny keyboard, maybe having a hard time seeing the letters and whatnot. So they hit the microphone button and they talk to Google. And here's my query. Younger generations, all about efficiency. If you give them an easier, faster way, they'll use it. So they don't go to the keyboard because it's so much easier to smash the microphone, say it out loud, and off we go. All right. We're not shopping with our smart speakers, but we are engaging with them a lot. So that tells me it's the relative pass-through, easy to answer, straightforward stuff that I can ask. And last time I checked, all of humanity is still taught to speak in full sentences, to use the structure we are educated with. So we don't change suddenly when we ask our phone a question. We don't suddenly become keyword communicative. We don't suddenly toss out questions as 3-word phrases. No, we ask our whole question out loud. And so when the consumer shows up on your website, if they see a prominent search box, the very next most logical thing in their mind is, I have to ask my question again. I didn't get my answer. And Google has taught them, toss your question in the box. So imagine now, you take this little icon, this little spyglass that's hidden up in your top corner. You give it a box like Google does, prominent in the center upper portion of your web page. So it doesn't matter whether it's mobile or desktop, this thing is prominent. Person lands on the page. You have to make sure that your headline matches their attention for your content. And if that doesn't immediately attract them into the content to engage with it, hey dude, you got a box here. That's your backup. That's your do not bounce box. That's your ask me the question. I will give you the answer. Now, let's dive into that box for a second, because there's 2 versions of this, and this is the way it is today. We've got the original version, which is keyword lookup. It's, I hope that what you enter here is what the developer put into the database 8 years ago. So it better be the same keyword, or I'm going to bring back a big fat 0 answers for you, or worse, the seemingly, quote, more intelligent version, which brings back a bunch of other crap that's unrelated, but PR wanted those press releases shown and marketing wanted these evergreen pieces shown. And so I don't have an answer for you. Maybe you're interested in these ... that are in no way related to the question you asked ... So that's a version of it. Or you can actually look for systems that will give you a Google-like experience built onto your page, that are controllable by your marketing department, that legitimately bring forward all those answers. So all of those donuts that you've been buying for that team that was told by the CMO, they have to get together and pool their thinking on content, all of that input now gets served by this system. And you are able to discreetly put links in directions you want them to go. Most importantly, throughout all of this, is the engagement time with the consumer is increasing. They're not bouncing away from you, they're staying with you. They are engaging with your content. They are thinking of more questions to ask you. You are looking more authoritative. They are bookmarking you. They are buying from you. That's where all of this is. And this is the cherry on this sundae. You have all of the questions that are asked, not a subset of phrases with stop words that have been removed and other things that have been put in a bucket and not provided to you. You have every discrete question that is asked at your disposal for you to understand as deeply as possible what the intent is behind that consumer. So you take all of that data back to your team of 5 over coffee and donuts, and you say, all of these questions, demand gen, what does it mean to you? Evergreen, what does it mean to you? Customer support, what does it mean to you? And you will find there is an endless amount of information that can be taken from this, and an endless number of ways you can use these questions to develop content to support all your areas. Not to mention lowering cost of customer support. So your phone doesn't ring more, it rings less. Oh, and a funny thing happens along the way. Now, all of a sudden, consumers are super happy with the experience they had. So your review team hits them with a review when they're happy, and they go, 4 stars for you. You were awesome.
I mean, you take it. You've done the full circle. You've done the full circle of basically funnel creation, and I'm going to be a good host, and I'm going to run through some of these awesome questions. And thank you to everybody who's answered it. Will says, by the way, this is just so you can speak really fast. Will says you're a genius, and he's floored. Okay, but we're gonna get back.
Thanks,
and I see a wonderful question in here from Rebecca. She asked about the comment about establishing authority at the site section. I'll answer that question because it was a comment that I had made, Rebecca. It really means that, you know, an example, and this is actually a cited example from Google's engineers for this one, as they wrote the original authoritativeness calculation. It means that the careers section of the Johns Hopkins website is not the area of expertise on medical knowledge. Another section of that may be. So they can determine it's an OM times N complexity problem. It's a topic and also section. So it can be a subsection, a section, subdomain. Any way you slice and dice it, you need to be thinking about the topics you cover and then the places where they're represented with that coverage, and also the off-page factors that are involved in that. That's the tricky part. But I don't know. Do you have anything to add on that, Duane?
No, you know, I love the way I love the way you're phrasing all of this. I think you're bang on point. My only thing, I'm going to bang the drum on this one more time, right? Up level that, because all of that thinking, all of that effort at a category level, you take that same approach at the level above, and then the level above, because you will always find it useful as you go up. No question about it. But I love that, Jeff.
Awesome question. No, awesome way of phrasing it. I always like to, I naturally think in taxonomies and ontologies, and I think you all too. One question, and this is a comment, it said, you know, people think that internal search is a failure, but the clicks someone takes, the area of the page that they read, the internal searches they make, the actions they take, and the conversions they make, that is your cluster. So there's a question about, and I love that comment. It's the combination of all those things, what areas of the page they read, the links they clicked, the internal searches, that's actually your cluster. So the question that somebody asked was, another question was, how do we use this to build clusters? He just described it. It's everything somebody would do when they landed on your pillar to have that full experience. So I love that.
Let me add this. So let me add this. I want you guys to start thinking about this. Google uses a knowledge graph to power search, as does Bing, as does Amazon, as does everybody who's big and burly and successful. Your website needs to have its own knowledge graph about itself in order to be relevant moving forward. Everything is an entity, an attribute, and has a relationship. You build that map out, you suddenly see things very differently of the value of your website. And all of this is applicable in that area. It's massive. And look, the comment about site search. If you want to understand the value of site search, first off, look, it's self-serving for me to say, follow me, follow my company, blah, 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 right? So instead, I'm going to say, go look up a guy named JP Sherman at Red Hat. Follow him, all right?
I know JP.
JP will set you straight on the value of site search, all right?
Oh, yeah.
You want to know somebody who's really deep into ontology and really understands the power of a knowledge graph and how it feeds into a consumer's experience. Follow Aaron Bradley over at EA.com. All right. It's extraordinary, the work that these guys are doing. And I happen to know them, they're friends, but I can vouch for them. They are smart guys. They are really on top of it. So follow those guys. You'll see this value.
Yeah, Seth Early from Early Information Sciences also has taught me a lot about ontologies. It's really something you need this. So great stories. By the way, we're just rapid firing. Anything we don't get to, we're going to do in the AMA. But I'm going to from Elias, your question is very specific to Duane and its speech he gave at SMX Paris 2015. So we're going to do that in the AMA if you want that one specifically. Okay, Jim Kennedy, awesome. Hey Jim, what's up, man? I know. What's up, Jim?
I will have you know, at that event, I was on heavy medication because I had wrenched a muscle in my neck, and I had to have Danny and our other panelists sit to my right because I couldn't turn my head to the left. So that's our starting point for Paris 2015.
I love that. Well, we'll get to that in the AMA. That's what the AMA is for. Okay. You talked about it's a great story, and this is about the coffee. This is back at that point. How would you? Oh man, this is a great question. We'll answer that, Jim. How do you adjust? How do you achieve that same experience if you're an affiliate? And I mean, the way I always think about this is you better own a UGC. You better own a community that's connected to your affiliate sites. Yeah. And you gotta fake it, and that's hard to do. How do you think about that, Duane?
So here's my perspective. Okay, look, affiliate's not easy, right? Because you're already up against, a duplicate issue right out of the gate. That's just the nature of it. But understand that the vast majority of those people are taking shortcuts. That's why they got into it. They think about it. You don't take the shortcut. Okay, you have to be more authoritative than the person whose program you're involved with. All right. So I will give you this example. In my Jeep, I was saying this to Jeff before we started. I have a refrigerator in my Jeep. I go overlanding. I camp in the desert here in Southern California. I am installing a slider so my fridge can slide out of the back of my Jeep. I need that slider. Now, I can spend $400 and buy one here, or I can spend $45 and buy one from China from the manufacturer and have it sent to me. But if I'm going to spend $45 on it, I'm actually going to spend $450, get 10 of them, have a custom logo done, spin up a quick website, and I am going to go into so much detail about the usefulness and the measurements because I'm going to order one of each of those sizes, and I will do the measuring of the product, and I will show that information, and I will create the use case videos, and I will create all of that, and I will develop the community of people who love this brand, and I will exploit them to tell their stories and rate this and rank this. And if you do all of that, you start crushing everyone else because everyone else is either taking a shortcut, not investing, or they simply gave up. So treat it like a full-scale business and approach it that way. You do that with 2 or 3 things, you'll find the winner. And then you A/B test. You try something different against that. And you just keep swinging vine to vine on the things that resonate most within your community. And that's where the revenue is for you.
Yeah, it's passion, it's expertise, and it's the stages of the funnel that aren't being addressed well. And then that's how I treat it. It's how I work with we have piles of affiliate clients. And if you find other affiliate sites that learned SEO from affiliate touts who don't know the game, they just know a few tricks, you can exploit the hell out of them too. Hey, there's my expletive. But yes, you got to cover what great customer service is for that fridge to win. And that's Jim.
Here's what I'm going to tell you. Here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're in the affiliate space, you're working 24/7. And I'm not saying that to be, blithe or the throwaway statement. I mean, you're working 24/7 because the instant that conversation starts up with you, the instant someone reaches out to you with a question, you're immediately responsive, instantaneously responsive and guiding them because you will guide them to the sale. There's no question about that. But if you take your time and if you do it when it's convenient for you, no, that's a fail right there.
You got to be the best consultant anyone's ever experienced dealing with to be successful long term, and that's it. So that's awesome. Okay, Heidi Cohen. Hey, hi, Heidi, one of my favorite humans. When you talk about, what is the depth of knowledge that the content creator needs to consider, and speak about content structure in kind of what's behind the scenes in structure, and then also, basically. Heidi mentions that the brand must be available to think in terms of marketing of the brand in general. Yeah,
is that Heidi Cohen?
Yeah, Heidi Cohen.
Hey, Heidi, how you doing?
Hey, Heidi Cohen. Yeah, let's talk about site structure, schema really quick, and also you know, how much depth should I consider that my creator needs to really knock this out of the park? So.
Okay. Do you want to lead on that one, Jeff, or you want me to take a run?
No, I think you know this can be it's gonna be a pretty quick one, and then we can get into more details in the Slack, because we're gonna do this question and two more super quick ones. So and then she also asked, what's UGC? User generated content, by the way. So, yeah.
Okay. So listen, let me rapid fire on this one. Okay. Site structure matters less as long as it's crawlable, accessible. The usability is there. You're on the right path. The schema stuff. You always use every bit of schema that is relevant to anything you're putting on there. Never spam with schema tags. Always use all of them that you can. That's the general rule of thumb. Do it. It makes a difference in the big picture. Now, talking about content, depth. You need to be more authoritative on that content than the most authoritative person is on that content if you want to be the most authoritative. Otherwise, you are going to put a metric crap ton of effort into trying to figure out where the balance point is, where you match them but don't exceed them, and then some other thing gets you to rank them. But then if they add a sentence to theirs that becomes useful to the consumer in Google's eyes, now suddenly they outrank you. Why would you do it? Go deep every time. But when you do that, be very careful to select where you're going deep. Look at areas across a website or a topic and understand what the profitability to your bottom line is. Because there's no point in chasing a phrase that's got a ton of traffic on it and trying to be the super deep authoritative person on it if that crap doesn't convert. So, you know, look, I get it. Leave that content alone. It may be useful in the future. Don't consider it a loss, but focus in the areas that you know are converting or that you need to convert. The ones that are high profit margin things for you. It's always a good cut line. I had to, oh, good Lord. His name is escaping me. Rob. His name is escaping me. He wrote SEO in 1 minute a day or something like that. And his theory, his approach to this was you take all the URLs in a website, you put them in a spreadsheet, you assign a dollar value to every single URL, okay? And every URL will have a dollar value, even if it's a 0. You put it in, then you resort that entire list by dollar value. You now understand the value of your website URLs based on actual revenue to your business. And then that's a good spot to actually start filtering, what do I invest in? What do I go deep on for my content?
Duane, we're going to pause there because the punchline on that is MarketMuse inventory does that for you. And if you can believe it, that's MVP 1 minute a day or a minimum viable SEO. I love that. Value per month, you can put in your own RPMs. But thank you so much for joining us. We've got an offer for any of our self-serve offerings. Get them while they exist because there's a package change coming if you're not on these. But also our premium offerings have just changed. They are amazing for portfolio owners. They're amazing for agencies specific or for big brands. We've really tuned this up and they're really home runs. Now, Duane, thank you. And you're about to jump into the AMA. We're going to get into more details. I'm bringing all these questions with me. But if anyone wants to re-ask or ask more specific questions, the one thing I take from everything that you said today, Duane, mostly, and I'd love to give you the last word, is if you don't know your content efficiency, if you don't know how much content you create or update and how much of that is successful, you can't even get started here. Like because your cost of content is actually 10x what you think it is. And that's one thing I take away from the dividing line is act smart, do things that actually make an impact. But I'll give you the last word.
Dude, just don't take shortcuts. There's no possibility that shortcuts work today. I can't stress this enough, right? This falls right under the get your head out of your ass scenario here, right? It is just that simple. It is complex today. It is massively complex because humans are complex. We are not easy. And the search engines understand this, hence all the complexity. So if you feel overwhelmed, you're in the right place. Just know that.
Love it. And thank you again so much. No shortcuts. Don't listen to anyone that says that there are. Cheers, y'all.